Hey everyone, our guest today is Chip Fichtner, principal and founder of Large Practice Sales, which has sold over $200 million in dental practices of all specialties in the last 12 months. He has been a serial entrepreneur for over 35 years. He has served as chairman or CEO of several public companies and has been featured in numerous media outlets, including CNBC, The Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and Money Magazine. He has been presenting to groups around the globe on the subjects of economics, marketing, and dental practice monetization since 1982. We're very happy to have him today to discuss, among other things, his unique silent partnership model. Chip, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's a beautiful day in Maryland today.
Is it? Yeah, it's pretty nice in Charleston. I'm looking out the window. That's great. So tell us a little bit about your background. How did this all get started?
You know, my background is a varied background of buying, starting, and selling businesses. Like you all, I like to think I'm a good marketer. And so I've been in a variety of businesses ranging from, I think my most famous one that many of the older guys on this might remember is a company called Triple Edge Windshield Wipers. This was a windshield wiper created and patented in 1988. The company failed. We bought it out of bankruptcy and took it from 0 to 55 million in sales in 36 months.
Wow, 36 months.
That was marketing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in the meantime, we've been buying and selling and starting businesses for our own account for the last 35 years. Yeah. And today, in the last several years, we've been in the business of helping great dentists monetize their practices in part. And it's been an interesting journey. We tried to tell all of our clients and prospective clients last year that the peak in values was being witnessed in 2019, and certainly we didn't predict a pandemic, but I think the peak in practices was realized in 2019.
Yeah, I think you are pretty spot on there.
So, but it's interesting. Certainly our clients are happy to have $200 million in cash in their pockets because this is probably a good time to have cash, but more importantly, just in the last couple of weeks, we've gotten emails and calls from our clients that we monetized in 18 and 19 who said the best part about their transactions that they did was that they now have a big partner to help them deal with the drama and distress of what's going on right now. And frankly, what will be going on for the next year or two. We've got a long road to go on this. So partnership is an interesting concept.
Absolutely. So you're not in the mindset that this is going to be sort of a V-shaped event. We're going to have to endure it for a little while.
No, I'm a big believer. I'm 60 years old, so I get to have an old guy's view of the world. But this is an event that we have not witnessed ever. And a lot of people go, "Oh, this will be the worst thing since the Great Depression." The reality is the Great Depression rolled out over multiple years. What we're experiencing right now has happened in 45 days. So we're in uncharted waters, and what's going to happen, I have no idea. But I think as a general rule, the human emotion is going to take a while to get back to normal. It is not a snapback. It is not a V-shaped recovery.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. So tell us more about what exactly Large Practice Sales is.
Well, we're kind of specialists in that we work with larger dental practices, typically those that have operating earnings of at least $500,000 after paying the doctor. And we introduce them to what we call invisible DSOs. Functionally, it's a silent partner that buys a part of your practice for cash up front at long-term capital gains tax rates, which is something we'll talk about later. And then they hope to provide the doctor and his practice with resources that they could not access by themselves. And those resources might include marketing, they might include lower product purchasing, they might include better benefits at lower costs for the team members. And sometimes we get lucky and we find partners for these doctors that have complementary practices in their areas. So as an example, we did a transaction for an orthodontist last year, absolutely stunning orthodontist doing over $6 million in collections by himself.
Yeah.
No associate, 2 offices, and this guy was working 5.5 days a week. He was working.
Yeah, of course.
And the partner we found for him just happened to own the 5 pediatric dental practices within 10 miles of him.
Ooh, that's a good one.
They were referring 1,500 ortho cases a year, and none of them were going to him.
Oh, wow.
So he was really the ideal partner for this group. So they came in and bought 70% of his practice and paid him about 17 million in cash. And then they started, he retained an ownership interest in the practice of 30%.
Hmm.
So he still had skin in the game. He wasn't going anywhere. He signed a 7-year agreement to stick around and run the practice. And they didn't rebrand him. They didn't change anything. They just started referring 1,500 ortho cases to him.
Yeah, after he's already doing great. That must be.
Yes. So his practice has now doubled. His 30% retained ownership is worth far more than the 100% he had a year ago. So those are the kind of partnerships we like to put together. We're looking for great doctors with a growth plan and a vision that these invisible DSOs want to get behind, and they want to help them. And they do that not only through cash up front, but the doctor retains an ownership interest, and therefore he is personally motivated to continue running that business with his team, his strategy, exactly what he had been doing in the past, but functionally turbocharged.
Is that the main difference between a visible DSO and a regular DSO, is retaining some ownership?
That's one of the ones, but the other thing is maintaining the local brand. The invisible DSOs believe in local brand and local goodwill. They don't believe that coming in and slapping Heartland or Aspen or whatever on the door is going to improve the practice. They believe that the local doctor, if he's a good one, has done a great job, and why break what's not broken?
Uh,
So that's the
From a
primary
marketing
difference.
point of view, I agree with you. It definitely is. People want to buy local, and that's very helpful to market it that way.
Yeah, especially in a business like this, because you're not going to travel for orthodontics. You're going to have to see that doctor for little Billy or little Susie's braces for 12 or 14 times. You want to be local, and the doctors have built a reputation and a value in the community that gets lost when somebody tries to rebrand them.
Yeah, it's almost like they disappeared and a new guy came into town.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. So tell me a little bit about the 200 million in 2019 transactions that you completed.
Each of those transactions last year, probably 90% of those transactions were for specialists. We do probably half our business is ortho, probably 40% is oral surgery, and the balance is the other specialties. Endodontists at the moment are particularly hot because they have continued to practice in a lot of cases through this crisis. But ortho is sort of our home. We've done a lot of ortho transactions. We even closed an orthodontic transaction in Honolulu, Hawaii 10 days ago, which was a miracle.
Right.
Because there aren't that many DSOs that are interested in Honolulu, and this was a challenging transaction, and to close it in the middle of the crisis was a miracle.
Absolutely. Well, good job.
Well, and it's kind of interesting because the smart groups, some of the groups today have stopped their partnership seeking opportunities, and they are, as they say in the business, pencils down. They're busily working on triage of their existing practices. And keep in mind, some of these invisible DSOs have 200, 300, and 400 practices across the country. So everybody was of the opinion that, oh boy, until this crisis is over, nothing's going to happen. Well, the reality is we've probably gotten more offers for practices in the last 2 weeks than we got in any 2-week period in January or February. There are groups out there that are very eager to go find great doctors now, so that they don't have to compete with the big guys. They don't have to bid against the big guys to find great practices. We've signed 2 deals this week, and it's only Tuesday.
Oh, so that's the logic. They don't have to compete with these other big guys.
Right.
That's interesting. I definitely wouldn't have thought that. So are there any specific regions that specialties you focus on?
We've done ortho from Boston to Honolulu and every place in between. But we are truly national. We probably will not do any deals in Alaska, but we sold the 2 biggest ortho practices in Montana and Wyoming a couple of months ago. And there were no DSOs in Wyoming at all. They were the only 2 states that did not have DSOs.
That's interesting. Okay.
It is. And, it's interesting because many of these invisible DSOs are regionally focused. They want New England, or they want the Southeast, or they want Texas. So every practice has value. Some are more valuable than others based on location. Heavily rural practices are a little tougher, but there's still somebody interested in them. It's about finding the right partner for the doctor, because this is not a transaction, it's a marriage. And so what we do is we're functionally a dating service. We're introducing doctors to multiple potential partners, and they're literally going on a date. We'll fly out, and the doctor and me and the prospective partner will do an after-hours practice tour and then go have dinner. And you do that several times and figure out who you like and who you don't like. And then it's a marriage, because the doctor's not leaving. The doctor is staying exactly where he is, doing exactly what he's been doing for, highest value is at least 5 years. But we did probably a dozen transactions last year for doctors under 50, under 40, and under 30. No, 37 was the youngest we did last year. Younger doctors.
No, 37, really.
We did 5 doctors under 40 last year. And these are the doctors who said, basically, you know what, I'd love to have a partner to execute my growth strategy. And so the younger doctors will typically only sell 60% of their practice, keep 40, and therefore they have a 40% ownership interest in whatever they go build. And when you have a partner who can handle management, administration, capital, et cetera, you can grow faster. And they want you
really
to
focus on being the doctor and giving great service.
Yeah. It's an interesting opportunity for younger doctors. And the nice thing is it's risk-free for the doctors. They've put cash in their pocket, and all growth is financed by their partner. So they can go build an empire without any risk or obligation.
So they can basically grow as fast as it makes sense to do so.
Yeah, absolutely.
So their retained interest really can be worth a lot more than their 100%.
Absolutely. And especially today. I mean, I hate to say it, but there are going to be massive opportunities to buy smaller practices where the doctor has failed to snap back or the doctor is thrown in the towel. And these practices will be bargains for guys that are smart operators and can either add their patients into their practice or use them as satellite offices. But there are going to be some phenomenal deals in the next year. Phenomenal.
Yeah, I bet that's true. I'm always warning potential clients that if you don't create some sort of marketing system at least, and you're just relying on doctor referrals right now, you're putting yourself in a lot of danger come a recession or any sort of hiccup like we're having right now. Because you put
hiccup,
all your eggs in one basket.
That's a very delicate word. Hiccup. That's what this is.
Yeah.
No, it's doctor, especially in orthodontics, you have to be a direct-to-consumer marketer. Mm-hmm. If you're not direct-to-consumer marketing and doing it correctly, you're going to lose out. And you need to understand marketing as an orthodontist. It's more important than any other specialty in dentistry. If you're not focused on marketing to the consumer and communicating with the consumer on a regular way in which ways they're used to communicating. So if you're not texting your clients, you're way behind.
Absolutely. Yep. I totally agree. So are the regions that are hot, are they just rapidly changing right now because of Corona? What do you think is going to happen?
No, I think regions that are hot are typically regions that have, for ortho, younger demographics and growth. So right now, we've put together a transaction. It's about $110 million deal for a group of orthodontists in Utah. Well, Utah, if you think about it, has more kids per capita than any place else on the planet.
Yes, I did a buyer persona survey there, and it was totally different than all my other clients.
It's a different world. So regionally, they're interested in places that are growing. Dallas-Fort Worth is always popular. Atlanta is popular. But if you look at it, Boise, Idaho is growing faster than both Atlanta and Dallas. And slowly the DSOs grasp that. It's growth is important, but we get great values for practices that are not necessarily in particularly hot growth areas. Montana and Wyoming are good places, but it's not a particularly hot growth area.
I gotcha. So what exactly is an IDSO? Why do you like them as partners versus other options doctors may have?
Well, doctors today usually think of transition as something they do late in life. It's an exit. It's a path to retirement. Mm-hmm. With an invisible DSO, it's really not, certainly ultimately it has an exit strategy, but the real value in it is using their resources to make your practice bigger, better, faster, cheaper, as we say. And these IDSOs have resources. They're paying $800 for Invisalign, and you're probably not. The average doctor on this call is probably paying $1,400 or $1,500 for an Invisalign case.
So you even get that, you get that advantage. You don't have to worry about all the going up the ladder and Invisalign.
You bet. Absolutely. And it's
changing their margin right there.
Huge.
Yeah.
And there are many other areas in which they can be helpful. And I think they're going to be particularly helpful in trying to comply with the new world order thanks to COVID-19. Mm-hmm. It's going to be, if you have to be socially distanced at 6 feet, what do you do with an 8-bay or an 8-chair open bay operation? That's going to be challenging.
A lot of our guests have talked about that, how that's probably going to change the whole setup of doctors' offices.
It is. And the other thing is, ortho, I believe is, if I were in the business of buying practices, I would buy ortho because I'm buying a book of recurring revenues. I've already got patients that are going to keep coming in no matter what happens, and they're going to keep paying me. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I'm a GP, I don't have that same luxury. I'm hoping that people come back every 6 months for their hygiene appointment, and I'm hoping they still want veneers and crowns and whatever. But with ortho, you're buying a consistent, already started book of business. And so to me, ortho is a much lower risk acquisition today if I'm trying to get into the dental business. But the Invisible DSOs can provide a long list of things that help make your life easier. And it varies by Invisible DSO. As they say in the business, if you've seen one, you've seen one. They're all very different. Okay. They're different in how they structure their transactions. I'll give you a great example. In our Salt Lake and Utah project, a large number of LDS doctors, Mormons, and many of them, one of the greatest honors in their faith is to be called for a mission later in life. And when you get called for a mission later in life, it's a 3-year commitment. And so many doctors were looking at this transaction and going, well, what if we get called for a mission? Well, the answer is the partner agreed that if they get called for a mission, they would be happy to repurchase their retained ownership, the ownership that the doctor kept, at the then value, as long as they gave a 1-year notice. And the missions all have a 1-year notice. So every transaction is customized to meet the doctor's goals. In multi-doctor practices where you have, and we see it a lot in oral surgery, but you have a 65-year-old doctor, a 55-year-old doctor, a 45-year-old doctor, and a 35-year-old doctor that are all co-owners of the practice. And so what happens there is the 65-year-old doctor is interested in getting more cash and less equity because he's headed towards retirement in the short term.
Yeah, of course.
Whereas the 35-year-old doctor is in oral surgery especially, he's at the beginning of his career. And so he's far more interested in what the upside in the ownership is than he is in taking a whole lot of cash today. So in these transactions, not only can they be customized by practice, but the consideration can be customized and tailored to what each doctor wants within that practice.
Oh, that's interesting. So each doctor can have their own kind of separate agreement.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So are you urging doctors to partner with an Invisible DSO right now, more so than in the past, and why?
Yeah, I really am. And my view is to some degree controversial, so I'll give you that caveat up front.
Yeah.
But fortunately, at the moment, the Invisible DSOs are of the belief that we're going to have the V-shaped bottom, and things are going to snap back, and we will get back to pre-crisis reality quickly.
So the most optimistic view is what's prevailing.
they have a very optimistic view that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, do not share that optimistic view. I think the shock that we've had to our economy, and especially to the psyches of the population, is going to be a significant barrier to overcome in the coming months and years. And so right now, I'm urging doctors to at least understand the value of their practice today, because shockingly, it's not that much different than what it was 90 days ago. The Invisible DSOs are keeping their valuation levels of, we'll call it late 2019.
Yeah.
They're structuring the transactions a little differently, such that some of the doctor's consideration will be tied to the time and rate at which they return to pre-crisis levels. But from a value standpoint, it is pretty much the same as it was. And to me, this is a time for doctors to take advantage of that, because functionally, they're gambling. If they don't take advantage of that today, they're gambling what is probably the most significant piece of their net worth on the snapback theory. So if the snapback theory happens, they'll be fine. If the snapback theory doesn't happen, the value of their practice goes down dramatically, because the measurement in these businesses is based on their trailing 12-month earnings. Well, when you factor in a March and April and a May, which are not going to be the best months in the dental industry, into your trailing 12-month earnings, you're then unable to sell functionally until June or July of 2021.
Oh, wow.
Now, the other issue is, and I think is the biggest and a fairly known issue, is that we're bailing out $5 trillion. Somebody's going to ultimately have to pay for that. The candidate for the U.S. presidency that's leading in the polls at the moment has made it very clear on his platform that he plans to eliminate the long-term capital gains tax treatment provision.
Yeah.
Which is a nice way of saying the taxes that you pay on a practice sale this year are going to be half what you'll pay next year.
Wow.
And whether that candidate is sitting on the throne or the current throne sitter is still there, ultimately tax rates are going up, and I think they're going up next year. And so we may be seeing the lowest long-term capital gains tax rates of our lifetimes right now. And so if you want to close a transaction in 2020 and monetize a part of your practice value, you need to start doing it now. It takes 6 months to do one of these transactions. From the time somebody signs up with us to the time they put cash in their pocket is 6 months in the old days. What it's going to be today, I don't know. But if anybody is interested in monetizing their practices, as I say in my newsletter this week, you have about 48 days to get started, because those who start in July won't have any certainty of making a deal by the end of the year.
I gotcha.
So
Yeah,
yes, we are counseling doctors that now's a good time to take some chips off the table while Vegas is closed.
So there are deals happening now? Not
Yes, absolutely. We closed on an orthodontic practice in Honolulu 10 days ago. We've got other transactions that will happen pre-reopening, but most of them won't happen until after practices reopen, but they could happen quickly thereafter.
So what kind of values are doctors getting today versus 2019? Is it about the same, you're saying, because they're using 2019 numbers? Or
It is. They're using 2019 numbers, and they're using the same value metrics. The difference is they're putting in provisions in agreements that will tie some of that consideration to returning to pre-crisis levels within the next 2 years. So it's a fairly long runway.
Okay, so they give them a good. So what are the structures of the transactions compared to 2019?
Really not much different. Last year, our average transaction for an orthodontist, the Invisible DSO would buy 70% of the practice for cash up front at long-term capital gains tax rates.
Yeah.
And the doctor would retain 30% ownership either at the practice level or retain ownership in the parent that was their new partner, or most typically a combination of both. Each type of retained equity has a different risk and reward profile, and different cash flow considerations, because doctors who retain an ownership interest in their practice will get their piece of the profits paid to them quarterly based on their ownership interest. So it depends is the answer, but that's kind of a typical transaction, 70-30 right now. Last year, the range was 60 to 90, meaning doctors sold 60% to 90% of their practices for cash up front.
Okay. All right. So you see a lot of orthodontists during the evaluation process. What is going to separate a good one from a bad one?
You know, ultimately, we have an interesting metric that we use when I first talk to an orthodontist in this process, and I'll talk about our process in a second, but we will go to their website, and orthodontists uniquely in the dental industry have pictures of all of their team members on their site. And so we can figure out pretty closely most of the time exactly what the doctor's revenues are based on the number of girls on his site. And I say girls because 90% of them are girls.
Yep. Oh, I see. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an interesting metric, but the answer to the short answer to the question is the most successful orthodontists that we see are the ones who work the hardest.
I understand what you're saying because I have clients both on both sides with some, and I can totally understand this. They want to work, 4 days a week forever. They want to take a lot of vacations. They want that great quality of life. I totally respect that.
Absolutely. I'm
Others are
jealous.
just grinding it out, and they want to grow the practice as fast as physically possible. And then whatever their future goals are, it's up to them. But they're totally different points of view and how to run the practice.
It is, but the great practices really, in a nutshell, are those who think about patient care. I'll give you a great example. This is a doctor that we sold a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, "What's your secret?" He was doing 5.2 million by himself, no associate, 3 offices. The guy was working 5.5 days a week.
Yeah, I bet he was. Okay.
And he said, "My secret is that I touch the patient constantly." He said, for example, we have a camera outside over the front door, and whenever a patient gets out of their car, we're standing at the front door to open the door for them and greet them. He said,
Really?
I think that's the one most successful thing I did. And I said, so let's talk about marketing. What are you doing in marketing? And he said, naturally, we're doing SEO and the appropriate marketing things that we should be doing in the digital age.
Yeah.
But he said, the other great thing that we do is we have a party once a year, and we invite the staffs of every practice within 50 miles. And they do it at the country club. And he said, and we give out TVs and prizes and trips. And he said, it cost me $100,000, but I promise you, I have the most popular party in my county when it comes to dentistry. And we only invite the staffs, not the doctors.
Oh, that's interesting.
Staffs are much more comfortable when it's just staff, not doctors.
Yeah.
And he's been doing that for 10 years. And he has by far the biggest practice in his area just by doing that.
That's brilliant. Gosh, and he's willing to spend $100,000 on an event. There must be a good ROI if he's doing that.
Well, it started smaller, obviously, but over the years, he realized that was where he was getting the bulk of his patients. They were getting referred to him from the staffs in the dental practices of all types, including specialists, around his county.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least he's controlling those referrals. He's actually doing something proactively to make sure they still keep coming. That's interesting. So would you describe him as a superstar orthodontist, or what would you describe?
Absolutely. Any orthodontist who is doing $5.2 million in collections by themselves without an associate is a superstar orthodontist.
That's great.
We call them unicorns.
Yeah. Everyone has the potential. They just they need to want it and do the right ththings.
Yeah, but the good news is there are great practices where the orthodontists have been able to attract great associates and manage them appropriately, where the orthodontist is still working 2 days a week and yet making a great business. It depends on whether you want to do the work yourself or whether you have the ability to lead and manage and recruit. Recruiting is going to be interesting to see what happens after this crisis goes away. Oral surgery is an interesting category that's very difficult to recruit right now, and has been difficult to recruit for multiple years. If I had 20 oral surgeons, I could get them all jobs tomorrow, just at my clients. Orthos are lucky; they have an easier recruiting challenge than the oral surgeons do.
That's interesting.
Another interesting thing is. We've been able to get the best value for some of our orthodontists by getting other clients in their neighborhood that are complementary. So, for instance, we started with an orthodontist client in a particular city, great practice, and he introduced us to his friends, the pedos, and his friends, the oral surgeons. And we put together a close to $100 million deal for them as a group at a much higher multiple than any of them could have gotten individually. And it was not merging the practices. That was not it at all. It was just a single buyer who wanted to take a big bite in that community. And if you think about it, that's the ultimate marketing. Pedos are feeding the ortho, and the orthos are sending out a lot of wisdom teeth to the oral surgeon.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea. So what do you think the future of orthodontics is from your point of view?
You know, I think orthodontics is a great business because I believe that parents will take care of their children. You know, a lot of orthos got very nervous when Smile Direct Club came around.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I knew Smile Direct Club when they had 5 employees. I have an autographed New York Times article from the founder of Smile Direct Club. I met him at a conference that was being put on by a very controversial doctor who had invited Smile Direct Club to an orthodontist meeting because he said, "You guys need to understand who the competition is." And so that was, I don't know, 4 years ago. But the interesting thing is they really have not, in most practices we look at, they haven't cannibalized the orthodontist business. They've expanded the category to people who would have never gotten orthodontics at all. I believe they have helped the orthodontic business.
Really?
And I think moms will want to always go to an office where the professional is going to take care of their kids. So I don't have this Smile Direct Club's going to ruin the world theory. I believe that they've helped the orthodontic industry, and I think it's a business that continues for decades. You can't do orthodontics through teledentistry. Certainly you can look at the teeth, but sometimes little Billy and little Mary need to show up at the office.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't start a case through teledentistry. So I think the future of orthodontics is bright. It's certainly one of the highest margin parts of the business. The in-house financing that virtually every doctor provides makes it easy to get started.
Yeah.
So in times of economic distress, the orthodontic doctor is still going to get business because he's willing to finance it.
Oh, that makes sense. I hadn't considered that financing helps them like that.
Yeah, so I think orthodontics is one of the more recession-proof businesses. Certainly in dental, it is. And I think the basic human desire to provide the best for our children that we can, and since the doctor's financing it, I can still get braces for little Billy because I'm not having to come $5,000 out of pocket like I would for a major dental procedure.
Yeah.
Instead, Dr. Jones, the ortho, is going to finance it for me over 2 years, which I really appreciate right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It builds goodwill.
And I think we have clients very successfully competing with Smile Direct Club. You have to have a sophisticated digital marketing campaign. You have to spend a decent amount of money on your ad buy, but you can do it. You just can't do it the way you've been doing it in the past. It's not as easy as it was. You have to take it.
Well, we have a good story for you. Our client, the large ortho in Montana and Wyoming, in his view, Smile Direct Club was the best thing that ever happened to him because he was doing very little adult. And so what he basically did was come up with a 1995 aligner-based, we're going to straighten the front teeth. And basically doing the same thing that Smile Direct Club is doing, but his pitch was, with Smile Direct Club, it's through the mail. With me, you still get to come see me whenever you want. And so he priced it the same. He made the clear aligners in-house, so his cost of goods was not like Invisalign.
Yeah, that's.
And he was able to build a phenomenal piece of his business by using Smile Direct Club as his marketing machine, but just saying, "Hey, you get to come see me." Whereas with them, you don't.
I totally agree with that sort of campaign. It's hard to get a lot of doctors to take a chance like that. They don't want to see those low numbers, but it's business you wouldn't have gotten before anyway.
Well, he focused it only on adults, and he had a very low adult component at the time, so there was no risk of cannibalization for him. He certainly wasn't going to do that on kids. So to him, it was incremental new business.
Absolutely. That's a really good move. So why large practice sales versus the others? What are the...
The answer is we've done more orthodontic transactions than anybody else in the country in the last 3 years, number one, which gives us a knowledge base. We look at a lot of orthodontic practices' financial statements every day, and so we can tell you, what a good one is and what a not so good one is. But more importantly, it's really driven by our fee structure. We have a very unique fee structure in that we don't get paid anything unless a transaction closes. So the doctors have no risk to go out and try and find a partner. If we can't find them a partner they like at the value that we have told them is possible, they can walk away. They've invested some time, but they've invested no money. And the second part of our fee structure is very unique in the industry in that we're really the only group out there, advisory group, that only gets paid by the doctor. Most of our competitors are getting paid by both the buyer and the seller. which
Oh,
in my mind creates a massive conflict of interest because I can't really go beat a buyer up for a higher price if he's paying me.
oh yeah.
So for us, we are dedicated to and have always only been paid by our client, which is the doctor. And that's what has enabled us to get the crazy prices that we've gotten for some of our clients. We go out there and create bidding wars that the guys who are getting paid on both sides can't do. Because they
Absolutely. Like dual agency in a real estate transaction.
exactly, except it's worse because this is a more important transaction than any real estate transaction you'll ever do.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, this is the bulk of your net worth, and it's important that it's handled correctly.
Makes sense. So if someone's interested, can you kind of walk us through the process? What does it look like?
Absolutely. The process is pretty simple. We have an introductory call where I talk to the doctor, understand a little bit about their practice, understand their goals, because really our primary mission is to make sure that we can meet the doctor's goals. So if I talk to a doctor who says, "Hey, I'm a single doctor practice and I want to leave in a year," that's not a good fit for us. That's not our specialty. Our specialty is doctors that want to stick around and grow their practice. So we have an introductory call. We then provide them with a non-disclosure agreement so that we can have our discussions confidential.
Yeah.
And then we take a look at the doctor's P&L statements, not their tax returns, just their profit and loss statements for the last 3 years. Then we ask some questions looking for where the bodies are buried because every doctor out there has bodies buried in their P&Ls. And it may
Gotcha.
be the Verizon bill for the home phone is paid for by the office. But we're always looking to maximize value by finding personal expenses that end up slipping into practice financials.
Gotcha.
And then after that, we will have a conversation. I'll have a conversation with the doctor that basically says, "Hey, based on your financials and based on our knowledge of the market in your area today, we think the value for your practice in one of these transactions would be X. And if that X is of interest, then we can talk about the doctor engaging us to represent them in a process. Or worst case, they at least learn something. It doesn't cost anything. It's completely confidential, and it takes less than 2 weeks to go through it. And it might be an hour commitment of the doctor's time. But worst case, they'll understand their value, which I think is important, especially today.
Oh, absolutely.
And the
So
good news
is there anything other than financials they can do to make it more attractive to a buyer?
yeah, really the most attractive doctors are the eager, passionate doctors with a growth plan. You can give me marginal financials, but if you give me an eager, passionate doctor with a growth plan, he's always going to get the best value.
Oh, that makes sense. Are you approaching people generally? Are they generally coming to you looking for help?
No, we're pretty much a doctors come to us because we're really not selling anything per se.
Yeah.
So doctors who want to at least understand the benefits of having a partner, and I think more and more doctors are interested in this now because having liquidity in the next year or two is going to be important. And I think there's a lot of risk in not having the snapback that everybody thinks we'll have. So, we're really proud of ourselves that we sold $200 million of practices last year, but we've signed over $200 million of new clients in the last 45 days. The number of doctors that are becoming interested in this concept is growing exponentially.
It would be a great time to have liquidity right now, too, if you wanted to invest your money because the prices are right. So do doctors with more presence in the community have a better chance of a better sale?
Not necessarily. Again, a lot of it's about the doctor and his personality, and the numbers ultimately speak for their presence in the community.
So the personality really is going to matter because you're literally physically meeting with the potential buyer.
Oh, absolutely. You bet. Personality matters a lot in this business.
So do you have times when the doctor might like the buyer, but the buyer doesn't really like the doctor, and then it's just not going to happen?
Yes, sir. Because again, it's a marriage. You can't go into this where everybody doesn't love each other before they get married.
Yeah. I like that human element of it for sure. Okay.
No, it's critical to the whole invisible DSO model. That they don't have the ability to manage a practice. They don't have the desire to manage a practice. They don't want to micromanage it. They want to give the doctor tools that will make his life easier so that he can focus on patient care, not figuring out payroll next week.
Yeah, so feeling like they can trust them to make this happen and kind of make the plan work out.
Yeah, which is even more valuable today.
Absolutely. So if someone wants to get in touch, what should they do? What's the best way to?
They should go to largepracticesales.com. Take a look at our website, and they can inquire there, or they can give us a call. And our main office number is, what is our 954-300-2644.
Perfect.
At largepracticesales.com. We're pretty easy to find.
Yeah, easy enough. We'll put it in the recap as well. Well, Chip, it was really great talking to you. Definitely learned a lot.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, sounds good. And take it easy and be safe out there.
You do the same. Thank you.
You're welcome.